Humans and the Hospitality Industry, written by Kira 42. Branch Director Kevin Thrack, why did you hire the humans? Reading the scornful gazes of his junior counterparts from the system core worlds and the claws of their investors, BD Kevin Thrack replied, why not? There isn't a law against it. It's legal, but they don't even like 99% of our product line. They're lunatics there. Wait, interjected an investor. Is there potential to expand to human food as a niche product line if diplomatic talks go well? Legal banished a proposal for that as soon as the initial xenoculinary analysis report came in, explained the manager who'd questioned BD Kevin Thrack's hiring policies. Their fruits contain flesh-eating enzymes, exotic monosaccharides that'll shut down your poison filters, toxic seeds that'll cause you to suffocate despite being in prime atmosphere, and goddess knows what else. Their vegetables contain compounds that will precipitate the minerals in our bloodstream and rip us open from inside. Their spices are all either lethally poisonous or hallucinogenic. Their complex ingredients contain aggressive microorganisms that will absolutely destroy our digestive biota. We reviewed 1,000 crops and processed ingredients, 200 culinary traditions, and over 30,000 menu items. We found 2 ingredients that were edible to a plurality of our customer species. One is a vegetable that even the humans rarely cultivate because it forms dense thickets and is covered in the hairs that inject poison on contact. An analyst we sent to Earth made the mistake of removing his gloves to get better control of his camera equipment in the field of them. He had to spend 6 local months, 2.4 cycles, in a medically induced coma, and he was screaming in his sleep for 5 of those months. The other? Queried the morbidly curious investor. Invasive species. The translator does not do the word justice. Humans have a crop they won't plant in most of their arid parts of their Deathworld because it grows too well. Remember our former R&D director, Quilla Victal? That tree was why they suddenly tendered a resignation. She assumed that it was a typical primitive paranoia and ordered the planting of the mesquite on our contracted test plot on Vareth Alpha. After 6 months in agri-world growing conditions, that one tree took over the entire test plot and infringed into 3 others. The automated suppression systems were choked out by the roots or outright ignored. There were 5 attempts at manual suppression, all of which failed. We had to petition the planetary defense forces to fire thermo lancers at it, and 5 third-party test plots that bordered our own. 2 Varenthian cycles later, we found new mesquites growing at a nearby ranch, disturbingly. Being eaten and then digested by the feral acid bracts just creates optimal sprouting conditions. Our contract with the Varenthian Agritech Consultory is slated for early termination pending the end of the government investigation. The usual whispers of backroom deals and corporate smooshing have fallen silent at this point. A few eyes light up in realization, and a tentacle fishes out a datapad with recent revisions to food safety regulations. May I ask again, why are you hiring humans to be anywhere remotely near food? I don't care about the discrimination lawsuit, because those goddess-forsaken lunatics will get someone important killed, and our whole conglomerate buried in fines and criminal investigations. Kevin Thrack took a closer look at his colleague. They were in the same industry, but she was hired straight out of her core world university into management, solely concerned with legal briefings, spreadsheets, inflicting auditory damage, and her stock options. Her feathers looked familiar. Of course, she'd been Victal's junior and accepted a transfer to payroll and hiring for less pay at the cost of her bonus for that cycle. Typical corpling, smart enough to flee the sinking ship, but too stupid to stop pecking holes in the hull. My human staff are valuable precisely because they are goddess-forsaken lunatics, as you call them. I'm yet to meet a group of people that are as consistently inconsistent. But screen them properly and pay them well, and they are as excellent as any Clarion, Luminarian, or pretty much any core worlder with a unique perspective born from a Deathworld background that makes them suited for our ground-level operations, he said, in typical honeyed tone that had gotten him through dozens of these meetings in the past. Sounds more like a liability. Making up an excuse to fire those people, they'll hold up with the legal, chimed the voice from the conference call. That would be unwise. Our branches are on track 3, on track 2, and our contract Commissaries with Vanadium Mining Consortium outlined in our previous talks are essentially human-run. The Clarion Corpling's feathers twitch at the mention of Orthrak 2 as she quickly skims over her datapad. Breaking whatever pretense of professionalism was left, she exclaimed, "That's a military contract. Have you gone senile, or are you trying to bury us in whatever scandal those humans are going to inflict on us?" Kevin Thrak tastes blood in the air. He may be a chef trapped in Angus de Clavis, but he's been playing this game longer than she's been alive. Affecting a conciliatory and mellow tone, he addressed the room. "Gentlemen, ladies, please. Although this may veer into anecdotal, allow me to inform some of the newer investors as to the exact nature of the branch I manage." The chair bobs assent, and several discussion subgroups table their datapads and give him their undivided attention. As you know, the Orthrak system contains numerous deposits of untrahexium, an accessory mineral needed for military-grade jump drives and shield generators. So, as much of a galactic interest, the Vanadium Mining Consortium is an exclusive military contractor to secure these important resources for our common defense. He scratched his gills for a bit. The standard introductory pitch was rote at this point. Officially, we merely provide foodstuffs and the occasional logistical support, requisitions brokering and run some of our subsidiary chain restaurants in the system. He makes eye contact with the Corpling, narrowing his pupils into slits and closing his nictating membranes. Unofficially, our contracts are a bit more broad than the standard one. Orthrak 2 and 3 do not have any sort of native culture. They are a little more than mining platforms, restricted space docks, and temporary housing. So, what are bored miners, military garrisons, logistical pilots, and an assorted engineering subcontractors to do in their off time? Enjoy the local culture? There is none. Fly back home? It's a full-cycle journey, and their break periods are 2 daggy cycles at most. Taking a step back and sweeping the room with his gaze, he said, "We provide culture. The little dives and eateries that naturally spawn around the non-restricted industrial installations. But with the exception of the pesky local element to leak sensitive information. The chance for the mining crews, military garrisons, and transport crews to get to know each other in the third place. Logistically, this entails coordinating shipments to meet the nutritional needs of 21 different species from 62 separate depots, the closest of which is a full-cycle journey via jump drive. On the ground, this entails using our very limited resources to create a dining and relaxation experience that feels spontaneous and unbranded to our customers, yet controlled to the satisfaction of military intelligence and sufficiently consistent with our core brand." He chittered a bit to himself. The audience was right in the fork of his tendrils. "For this, I found that humanity's innate propensity and acclamation for chaos is invaluable. When we first opened our initial locations, our entire management staff, save I and a human of the house Brizikajawich, quit from the stress. The mining staff were at a constant odds with the logistic pilots and used our restaurants as a venue for their altercations. The garrison was divided over who was truly to blame. Live weaponry was brandished at several employees over this mislabeled crate. The entire platform was one breached drive chamber or misaddressed cargo shuttle away from being outright riot. I was barely getting 1/6 of my suggested sleep on most nights. The line staff were always looking over their backs. A waitress got caught with an unregistered plasma knife. It was a mess. You know how a Deathworld handles that kind of work environment? Ambush. Fist fight. Unsheathes his claws and kills them all. Senior management chuckle, having heard pretty much all the stories before. Nope, continued Kiventrak. He laughed. This was funny to him. He always ended up diffusing the situation, albeit in a way that would get him court-martialed in any other circumstances. His grand plan to pacify them was to invite the absolute worst of the worst from both the mining and logistics crews and give them free drinks. Violent incidents reduced significantly, but local command informed us that we were to never attempt the stunt again, due to the resulting hangovers impeding production. Only a Deathworld would look at a situation born of poor communication and irrational behavior and decide the solution was to induce a state of inhibited rationality and diminished communication. Mr. Bravinchkovich is by no means some isolated exception. Given Thrack elaborated. Miss Hogg's takeaway from being caught with a borrowed plasma knife with a disabled safety was to get it properly registered, along with a veritable arsenal of kinetic weaponry. Somehow, a legal process. That should take a paralegal 6 cycles on a core world took an untrained alien half a decacycle in an isolated mining colony. If she wasn't so reliable, her ability to outswindle the thrice-damned lawyer would be terrifying. Ah, yes. A question from Sir Twistfang of the Core World's Legal Division. This is not to be construed as an unlawful intrusion into the lawful property and private affairs of a law-abiding employee, hissed the civics. But I was under the impression that exotic weaponry, especially from a species that had yet to finalize their status within the conclave, was not legal to import to a registered military installation. She made them. What? She made them, with some discarded tooling, incorrectly formulated mining charges that were originally stated for disposal but got recycled into ammunition and some void-rated steel offcuts that were sold for scrap. And she managed to avoid charges? Yes, I'm not sure of the details, but she invoked the religious exception and gave a spare to the local garrison commander for safety testing. It felt like bribery to me, thought Kevin Thrack, not that he'd ever say that part out loud. Quickly shifting the topic so that the legal wouldn't dwell on the prospect that an armed Deathworld awaiting tables at a restaurant in a military mining installation, he brought out one of the classic anecdotes the upper managers loved to hear, especially while they were half intoxicated. She isn't selfish with her talents either. Half a cycle in, the logistics pilots brought in only shipments of Type O omnivore-compatible ingredients instead of the Type 3 and Type 4 herbivore ingredients we needed. A knowing look gets shared amongst the tech support workers. That old 204-bit integer overflow bug was a common issue with the central servers of older military ships that got refurbished into cargo haulers. It was easy enough to fix and avoid, but often caused on-ship inventory systems to default to incorrect entry instead of crashing or throwing an error message. We were looking at a massive ingredient shortage, and what was left was mainly culinary herbs, dried grains, and emergency rations. While I was panicking, and the quartermasters of the mining company and military garrison were up the gills of the logistics fleet over the conference call, Miss Hogg showed up intoxicated and said, "Hold my beer, boss," and asked for a 5,000 credit contingency fund in the safe. Since failure seemed inevitable anyway, Bravikovich was smiling. We approved whatever scheme she would attempt on the condition that she took the designated driver. She returned the next day with a hangover, a handful of parking tickets, and a frightened Lumerian line cook who later quit our company to join the priesthood. Having accepted failure, I simply asked that she return whatever was left of the contingency money, and promised that when our contract terminated, I would try to find room for her in whatever branch I was reassigned to. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Boss man, once it's not evidence. The cops say that we have a whole hydroponics wing now. They'll even tow it for us. Also, you now owe a Colonel Rack something or the other a lesson on how to make those little pastry things with the snake talk name. Stinglers. You know the ones." "Wait, evidence," hissed Sir Twistfang. "You admit in front of our investors, management, and board that an employee was embroiled in a criminal investigation, and this was endorsed by you?" "Allow me to clarify." Given Thrack recalled the numerous videos that circulated the very flattering military newspaper article. That old Deathworld hunting instinct led her to chase down contacts among the less thoroughly vetted and regrettably cantankerous logistics crew, and that young Lumerian was caught in the wake, poor guy. And all the Clarion who remembers the story goes green with suppressed laughter. Eventually her inquiries took her to the HR representative of the mining company, who she subjected to interrogation at gunpoint. "That's a felony, even on Earth," hissed Sir Twistfang. Well, it turned out the HR rep was a somewhat high-ranking member of the Black Cartel, trying to build up a drug operation and plot a hijacking of one of the transports. "How did she see through that disguise?" queried Sir Twistfang. "Forgive my language, but her exact words were, 'Some HR bitch who isn't a complete and total void-fucking arsehole that deserves to be strangled with their own overused tongue and thrown to the gators is obviously lying.'" There was a pause. No one in the room could really argue with that logic, even if they didn't know what a gator was. "Anyway," continued Kevin Thrack, It turned out that the abandoned station near Othrak 1 failed mining colony had been taken over and repurposed into the Black Cartel base just out of sensor range, replete with an agri-tech sector to minimize the need for resupply. So Miss Hogg stole her transponder, flew the Black Cartel station with a fortune of myristicin nuts and a ruse and some military police into the cargo hold, then gave them a Florida hello, which I'm told means ambushing and violently slaughtering fully armed drug dealers with kinetic weaponry. Then we borrowed their agricultural bay to use as a herbivore-compatible food supply. "And she kept her position after this?" asked the terrified-looking Banav in the counting tunic. "No, we promoted her." "Then promoted her again," replied Kevin Thrack. "She is the sub-manager in charge of Othrak 3 now." Setting his gaze back at the now thoroughly cowed-looking Clarion, he stares. "There are many other stories, but what it boils down to is that my branch judges employees based on their merit and actions, and we've been rewarded for it with the goodwill of both the galaxy's richest mining concern and the Galactic Defense Fleet. Do you have any objections to this?" Silence. The rustle of currency indicates some sort of wager has been lost. Pointing to a shrouded figure in the far corner of the room with a heaping plate of desserts, Kevin Thrack announces, "If anyone has any further inquiries concerning my hiring practices, please direct them to Miss Hogg over there. She has heard everything so far. And good evening." The bun of accountant was terrified. A Deathworlder here, one that murdered one of the worst drug cartels in the Conclave space. It doesn't matter how good of the job is or how much she needs the money. She waits for the branch director to finish his speech and bolts for the door. She knows the route, 2 lefts, then a straight sprint to the elevator. She can finish her resignation letter on the shuttle out of here. 1 left, and then air. Her feet is dangling in the air. Impossibly strong hairless arms are lifting her off her feet. The Deathworlder has her. The end is near. The end is near. "Hey there, little one. Did you lose your parents? Come on, little Fluffy. We'll fix a plate for you and call security so they'll get you where you gotta be." It's the Deathworlder. "No, Ima, that's not a child. That's a mature Banav. And your new accountant for the Othrak 3 location," says an old Lemurian who's about to break out laughing. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.